Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Rayhan Falari, and today we'll be exploring the fascinating organ that is the placenta. This temporary yet critical structure is very essential for fetal development, and it plays a significant role in maternal fetal interactions. So let's dive in as we explore this very important structure. Um, What is the placenta? Like I just mentioned, it is a temporary organ that is formed during pregnancy and it has a lot of functions. It forms the lifeline between the mother and the developing fetus. And it is a unique organ, not just because of its temporary nature, but because of its ability to serve multiple vital roles simultaneously. It facilitates gas, nutrient and waste exchange between the mother and fetus. And it has a number of key features. The fact that it is hemochorial, in the sense that it provides a direct contact between the maternal blood and the fetal chorion. It is also multifunctional, like I just mentioned, in the sense that it serves as a transport system, and as an endocrine organ, and as an immunological barrier. So there is this term that we need to be familiar with, and that is the decidua. The decidua actually is the endometrium, but after implantation occurs, the name becomes decidua, particularly to the part of the endometrium that receives the implantation. So the decidua, therefore, evokes a response. And eventually, we have three main parts of the decidua that are known as the decidua basalis, the decidua capsularis, and the decidua parietalis. Here, right here, under the implantation site, is the decidua basalis. And this, of course, is a sagittal section, or a sagittal view, or lateral view, as the case may be, of the developing human within the uterus. And you have the decidua basalis reflecting in both of these pictures of different ages of embryonic life. And the Decidua basalis is this part that is under the implantation site, while the capsularis is right here. So it is found between the implantation site and the uterine lumen. This white part is the uterine lumen, but the capsularis is the part that is overlying the developing embryo, uh, overlying the implantation site generally. So that's the capsularis, the cellular capsularis. Whereas the rest of the endometrium that is not receiving implantation is referred to as the decidual parietalis. So you can spot the chorionic cavity right in here, the amniotic cavity much deeper right in here. So this is the entirety of the uterine cavity. And here's the amniotic cavity again, and you have the developing placenta right here. So to go further, this is another view of implantation going on. So here is further typifying, the development of the placenta and fetal membranes. Particularly, you have the frontal section of the uterus here, showing the elevation of the decidual capsularies. Because in this frontal view, you won't be seeing the underlying decidual basalis. Okay, so you can only see the decidual capsularis, and that is what you have here. So it's showing its elevation, by the expanding chorionic sac of a typically 4-week embryo that is implanted in the endometrium on the posterior wall. Right. So when we go a little further, you can see a magnification of that same of that elevation right here. It's an enlarged drawing. I hope my pointer is still there. Yes. So it's an enlarged drawing right here of the implantation site. So the chorionic villi will then be visible after you have reflected, cutting open this part of the decidual capsularis. So the rest of these sections is back to the sagittal or lateral sections of the gravid or pregnant uterus from between 5 to 22 weeks, of course, showing the changing relations of the fetal membrane to the decidua. So these are things we saw in the previous picture as well. So you can see the decidua basalis in this kind of view, and then so this part would be the capsularis, decidua capsularis over here, and then the rest of the elevation is the decidua varietalis. So here is the site of the internal os. You have the vagina here. You have the mucus plug right here, and the rest of the structures as seen earlier. And here is the amniochorionic membrane at a more advanced stage. So here is another view, a lateral view of a spontaneously aborted embryo at the Carnegie stage 14, approximately 32 days. So the chorionic and amniotic sacs have been opened just to show the embryo, and you can see the large size of the umbilical vessel at this stage. So here is the the umbilical vesicle, and you have the wall of the chorionic sac here. You can see some of these vessels. So these are chorionic vessels. This is the wall, and the villi are visible here. And then here is the chorionic cavity. So just as a way of catch up, you would remember that after you have cleavage and you have transition of the zygote into the 2-cell stage, 4-cell stage, 8-cell stage, the morula stage, the blastocyst. We had the inner cell mass, and from the inner cell, next to the inner cell mass, you have the blastocele in a space here, and then you have another space occurring within the inner cell mass to the north pole of the inner cell mass, and that forms the amniotic cavity we can see here, and the primary yolk sac, the um, the blastocele now becomes the primary yolk sac, which you have here. So at this stage, this is a bilaminar germ disc, and this part is known as the epiblast, and then this is the hypoblast, which will be ventral, and the epiblast, which will be dorsal. So here is the primary yolk sac. But importantly, we are uh, drawing reference on the trophoblast, which is on the exterior here, which further differentiates into the cytotrophoblast and then the outer syncytial trophoblast. You appreciate that in this picture as well. So here is the cytotrophoblast, okay, and then here here is the syncytial trophoblast. So by way of capping this up, so we understand that development of the placenta is a complex, it is a complex yet well orchestrated process, which starts with differentiation of the trophoblast layers, and that's why I brought that background about the trophoblast. So it gradually then evolves into a highly specialized organ that is capable of sustaining fetal growth. So understanding these stages is quite crucial to appreciating the functions. So typically from the second week, the trophoblast differentiation begins, and then by the third week, the chorionic villi start forming, and then by the first trimester, the placenta has become fully functional. So the key steps here includes the differentiation of the trophoblast into the cytotrophoblast and the syncytial trophoblast. The cytotrophoblast, like I showed earlier, is the mitotically active layer, the inner layer of the trophoblast, while the syncytial trophoblast is the invasive outer layer, which forms lacunae for the maternal blood. So thereafter, you also have the formation of the villi, which come in three major stages. So you have the primary villi, where you have the cytotrophoblast projections. So you have the projection from cytotrophoblast, and this is usually between the 13th and 15th day. And then by day 16, we start having a secondary villi, in which you have the mesodermal core developing. And then by the approximately day 21, we start having the tertiary villi, which um, is responsible for the formation of the blood vessels that will eventually keep the placenta. to functional. So at this point, let's see how much we have been coming along through this live MCQs. And usually I make use of um, flashcards, of four colors. I want to believe you have your flashcards with you as well. So I'll project the question now, and you will be answering like we typically do in class. In the class, you flip or flash your card that bears the appropriate option, that bears the correct answer to the question after the count of three. And remember, if you are beside somebody, you can keep your flashcard below your chin, so that the other person doesn't see what you're showing. So here is the question so far. Which of the following is not a function of the placenta? And the options are nutrient exchange, immune protection, production of digestive enzymes, or hormonal secretion. Are you thinking? So, which of this is the correct answer? I congratulate you if you chose, if you flashed your yellow card, because the placenta does not produce digestive enzymes. What it primarily does, its primary role is nutrient exchange, immune protection, and hormone secretion. Okay, there is yet another question to test how far we're getting along. So, what is the key feature of tertiary chorionic villi? What's the key feature of the tertiary chorionic villi? Is it the formation of cytotrophoblast projections, or development of blood vessels in the mesodermal core, or initial invasion of the maternal endometrium, or the differentiation of syncytial trophoblasts? Okay, one to go. You can flash your card. Once again, I congratulate you if you have chosen the green card this time, if you have flashed your green card, because the right answer is development of the blood vessel in the mesodermal core. So tertiary villi are distinguished by the development of the blood vessels, which facilitates fetal circulation. All right, so going further into the structure of the placenta now, the placenta has a unique structure that is designed to support its multifaceted role. And here is the drawing of a sagittal section of the gravid uterus at 4 weeks, showing the relation of the fetal membrane to each other. Okay, and um, and its relation to the decidua and the embryo. So the decidua basalis is right here. You begin to see the spiral endometrial arteries. Now the chorionic villi right here, and then you have the maternal blood within the intervitellous space. Okay, so so importantly here we are emphasizing the amnion and the smooth chorion. So the amnion is this part here, which is brown in this case, and it is closely related to the chorion. So here is the chorion, the brown, the amnion is that blue part. And so the amnion and the smooth chorion, they have been cut, reflected to show their relationship to each other and their relationship to the decidua parietalis, which is the rest of the endometrium that did not receive the implantation. So you can only find the Decidua basalis beneath the part where the implantation happened. And then the rest of this is the uterine cavity. This is a background. Here is what the placenta looks like the, with the maternal face, or the maternal surface, on this part, and here is the fetal surface beneath here. So the placenta has this unique structure that is designed to support this multifaceted role. So the fetal surface, as you can see here, is quite smooth and connected to the umbilical cord, which arises from here, while the maternal surface is irregular, as you can appreciate here, as it divides into functional lobes are known as cotyledons. So here is a cotyledon, and these are grooves find between the different cotyledons. So the placentas and the fetal membranes after birth is what we are showing here, and it's approximately one third of the actual size based on what we are showing here. So the fetal surface, like I just mentioned, is covered by the amnion, and it is smooth with umbilical cord insertion. Then you have the maternal surface, irregular, and it is the part that faces the uterine wall. So the 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 fetal surface shows blood vessels running around here in the chorionic plate deep to the amnion, and it converges to form the umbilical vessels, which we'll appreciate in some of the subsequent pictures. So you can see those vessels all around. So these are the umbilical vessels that are radiating to form chorionic vessels. So the amnion is still right here intact, and then you have the chorionic vessels underneath the amnion. So the amnion is quite transparent right here. So you see the blood vessels running in the chorionic plate deep to the amnion and converging to form the umbilical vessels at their attachments to the umbilical cord. So the placentas and fetal membranes after birth are approximately one third of their actual size. And here is showing the amnion and the smooth chorion arranged in a way to show that they are fused and continues with the margins of the placenta. Okay, still see the umbilical cord going out of here, and right here you still see the placenta with the marginal attachment of the cord, and this is often referred to as the battle door placenta because of its resemblance to the bat used in the medieval game back then. So these are the veins, the arteries, and then you have part of the amnion still there. So going a little more into the functions of the placenta. So the placenta, like we've emphasized earlier, it functions as a life support system, in the sense that it transports oxygen and nutrients while still eliminating waste as well. So here is a diagrammatic illustration of the transfer across the placental membrane, which is represented or illustrated here. So it's serving as a barrier. Okay, so the extrafetal tissues across which the transport of substances between the mother and the fetus occurs will collectively constitutes the placenta. Okay, the whole of that. And then you can we have the umbilical arteries going out through the umbilical cord towards the placenta, and which is where the mother's endometrial veins pick up this waste, this blood that is deoxygenated now and containing a lot of waste. So the mother's endometrial veins pick this up and takes it into the maternal venous system for reoxygenation and to have the nutrients refilled. So once the mother is ready to give back to the developing child, fetus, water, carbohydrates, amino acids, lipids, electrolytes, hormones, vitamins, ions, and all of these. So all of these nutrients, so they go back to the child through the endometrial spiral arteries. Okay, so and then the nutrients pass through the intravenous space and then reach across the placenta and get picked up by the child's umbilical vein, which then delivers all of this to the child or to the fetus now. So you have waste products like carbon dioxide, water, urea, uric acid exiting through the umbilical arteries, and then you have other substances as well uh, coming back in. So here is a further illustration of that. So having the placenta serve as the barrier where the exchange happens between the capillary of the fetus and the blood of the mother. So you have oxygen going in, you have nutrients, you have water going in and out, and then you have carbon dioxide moving from the capillaries of the fetus to the blood of the mother, and then you have metabolic wastes as well. So, of the function of the placenta is also to act as a barrier, right? To act as a barrier. So, in this case, when you have most of the organisms coming from the mother, the placenta acts as a barrier such that it doesn't get into the capillary of the fetus. It doesn't get into the fetus through those capillaries. It saves no way. No, be they drugs, but then it's selective. Eventually, some drugs get to pass. A number of microorganisms, and so these are things that eventually serve as teratogen in some cases, and some of them can be of some level of help. So this way, the placenta is effectively able to serve as a barrier or as a selective barrier, watching what goes in and what comes out. A third major function of the placenta is its endocrine function. Its endocrine function, where you have it secreting a number of hormones like the human chorionic gonadotropin, um, which stimulates the corpus luteum, and this usually appears in the third week and gets to the peak around the eighth week. You also have the human chorionic somato mammotropin, that's HCS. It's also known as the human placental lactogen. So this stimulates the mother's mammary gland, and it appears usually from the second month and gets to its peak around the eighth month. You also have the human placental estrogen and the human placental progesterone. So both appearing around the fourth month and getting to their fastigium around the eighth month. So so these are some of the changes that happen in the woman as the pregnancy progresses. So here are median sections of the woman body, where you have a woman here who is not pregnant in this first picture here. So not pregnant, and by the time a woman is 20 weeks pregnant, that's what you see right here. And then the third picture here is that of a woman who is 30 weeks pregnant. So you should note that as the conceptus enlarges, the uterus also increases in size in order to accommodate the rapidly growing fetus. And by 20th week, the uterus and the fetus have reached the level of the umbilicus. Okay, and by the 30th week, they reach the epigastric region. So the mother's abdominal viscera are thereby displaced by this 30th week. They are displaced at this 30th week, and they reach this epigastric. So you would recognize that the mother's abdominal viscera, by virtue of this uh, enlargement of the size of the uterus, gets compressed and displaced, and the skin and muscles of the anterior abdominal wall also get stretched, which, if depending on the number of times the woman had carried pregnancies, may get back to their right position to the varying degrees of the elasticity of the skin and all that. So this brings together the major functions of the placenta. So which is to the transport functions, which cuts across gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide, nutrients like glucose, amino acids, lipids, and then waste like urea, bilirubin, exchanging between the mother and the fetus. And you have immune functions such as its suppression of maternal immune rejection and the endocrine function. So it also serves endocrine functions like the various hormones that we have listed earlier. Um, yeah, and I kept this to also remind of the full names of those hormones as previously acronymed. Just before this, yeah. So I think this summarizes the major functions of the placenta. So it's time for the check of how far we are doing with the lecture. So here we want to check whether or what you feel is the right answer to the question. The maternal surface of the placenta is characterized by which of the following? Smooth surface with umbilical cord insertion, or divided into lobules that are called cotyledons, covered by the amnion, or connected to the fetus via the chorionic villi. What is your answer? Count 1, 2, 3. You can flash your cards. Which card did you flash, by the way? So I congratulate you if you flashed the green card because that's the right answer. So you find the maternal surface being irregular, like I showed earlier, and divided into cotyledons, while the fetal surface is usually smooth and covered by the amnion. So let's go again with another question. This time around, I'm asking which of the following hormones is not secreted by the placenta? Is it the HCG, insulin, progesterone, human placental lactogen? Which of these? So 1, 2, 3. You can flash your cards. And which card did you flash? Once again, I congratulate you if it's the green, right? And it's quite coincidental. Green doesn't have to always be the answer. Okay. Yeah. So going further into placental circulation. So we have seen this picture before, where we show the unique structure of the placenta and how it is able to perform its multiple roles, right? Um, so there is an additional picture here that is emphasizing the placenta itself. So it is schematic drawing of a transverse section, as you can see, through the full-term placenta. So, and it's showing the relation of the villus chorion, which you have around here. So you have the villus chorion right there. Okay, so here is the chorion. Then you find you find it closely related as well to the Decidua parietalis, then the amnion on the deepest side of it. So you have the chorion, you have the Decidua parietalis, and over here you have the Decidua basalis, because this is where you have deep to the implantation site. And you have as well the fetal, circulation coming up all around here. So you can see the spiral arteries and the endometrial arteries and the endometrial veins, which aid the maternal circulation. Here is the myometrium, and then you have the mainstem villi, or the mainstem villus right here, which we will see in a more enlarged picture in a minute. So here is the branched villus, and at the end of the day, you see these arteries and veins, how they move around in the chorionic plate. Okay, so they move in the chorionic plate before eventually giving rise to the umbilical vein, right? And then the umbilical artery. So the umbilical artery in this case goes from the it goes from the child, to the mother, and it contains the oxygenated, I mean the deoxygenated blood. That's the blood that has poor oxygen. So it takes it into the mother for circulation. So this is how all of this happen around here. So you see the fetal placental um, circulation going on right here, and then the maternal circulation also right in here. So each of these is the cotyledon, which we saw at the full-term placenta in the previous picture. So here is the cotyledon, here is the cotyledon, right there, and they are separated from each other by the placental septa. So here is the placental septum right here. Okay, so these are projections of the decidua basalis as it goes to separate the cotyledon. So each cotyledon, you see it consisting of two or more main stem villi and many branch villi, like you can see here. So here is a main stem villus, and then you can see the branch villi stemming from the main stem villi. So only one stem villus is shown in each cotyledon, but some of those that have been removed are indicated right here. So it doesn't mean these do not have the main stem villi. It's just for illustrative purposes. Yeah. So to further appreciate the main stem villus, so we can see right here. Here at the end of the day, so after you have the branch villus, the branch villi all around, so they end up in capillaries, the arterial capillary, the arteriovenous capillary network. Okay, so and these are the fetal capillaries right here. So what this leads to is this is typically sections through the branch villus at about 10-week old, and then at full term right here. So here is at 10 weeks and here is at full term. And the placental membrane is composed of extrafetal tissues which separate the maternal blood in the intervillous space from fetal blood in the capillaries and the villi. So you will note that the placental membrane becomes very thin at full term. Okay, becomes very thin compared to what you have right here. And the Hofbauer cells, they are thought to be phagocytotic or phagocytic in their nature. By ingesting debris and getting them processed into waste that will be taken out of the fetal blood for you know into the maternal blood as waste. So fetal circulation, we've seen the umbilical arteries carrying deoxygenated blood into the placenta and the umbilical vein carrying oxygenated blood back to the fetus. And you have in the maternal circulation the spiral arteries that deliver blood into the intervillous spaces, and the blood exits via the vein. So the placental circulation is a sophisticated system that ensures efficient exchange of gases and nutrients. And the fetal and maternal blood do not mix, but they come quite close enough in the intervillous spaces to allow diffusion. So here is where we check again how far we're doing. In the fetal circulation, which vessel carries oxygenated blood to the fetus? So the umbilical arteries, the umbilical vein, the chorionic villi, or the spiral arteries. So let's see if it's going to be green this time around. And I hope you're not choosing green. One to go. What have you chosen? Certainly not green. But it's actually green. Yeah, so this is not intentional. Okay, yeah, so it's the umbilical vein that carries oxygenated blood back to the fetus from the mother. So let's go further into appreciating the placenta at term. Because at term, the placenta is well adapted as an organ that is fully equipped to support the fetus and transition during childbirth. So here we would appreciate the cervix dilating. Okay. Typically at term, the placenta weighs approximately 500 grams and it has approximately 22 centimeter of diameter with a thickness with an approximate thickness of between 2 and 3 centimeter. So yeah, so the functions that the placenta performs is not limited to gestational age. It also functions at term by sustaining the fetal needs until delivery. Okay. And it also prepares for separation during labor. That's a very interesting process. So that's why I have brought this illustration of parturition or childbirth. So where you have the cervix dilating during the first stage of labor, right here. So it starts to dilate. So here is the cervical canal. So it starts to dilate. And then from here to here, you see the fetus passing through the cervix and vagina during the second stage of labor. Okay, very interesting process. So right here, you see the fetus passing through the vagina. And then after the baby has exited, yeah, now we have a baby, no longer a fetus. So a neonate, you may say. Yeah. So after that, after the baby exits the canal, the uterus, starts to contract during the third stage of labor, where the placenta starts to fold and pull away gradually from the uterine wall. So in order to separate, so the separation of the placenta ends up resulting in some bleeding and formation of a large hematoma, which is like a mass of blood right here. So this, if a slight pressure is placed on the abdomen, it is one of the ways to further facilitate the separation, complete separation of the placenta. So, and then finally, you have the placenta also being expelled, and then the uterus starts to contract. So, this is a very interesting process, and it's a common understanding in Yoruba language that it's one thing to give birth to the child; it's another thing to also give birth to the placenta. So both are very important because until that is done, then there is still, I mean, the job is not over. So congratulations, we have a new baby. Yeah. So let's, as we round up, we'll just mention a number of abnormalities that could occur to the placenta, and these are shown here. So there is something called placenta previa, and which is where when you have the implantation happening near or over the cervical os. Okay. So the placenta abnormalities are quite significant causes of complications in pregnancy, and a prompt diagnosis of them and their management is quite critical to mitigate risk. So this is a placenta previa. It's one of those abnormalities that could occur. And then there could also be placental abruption, where you have a premature separation of the placenta from the uterine wall. You could also have what is referred to as the placenta accreta. And then you have placenta uh, percarita. So both of them have to do with abnormal adherence to the uterine wall. So in the case of the placenta accreta, it's attached to the when you have the chorionic villi, abnormally attached to the wall, to the endometrium. Okay, so that is placenta accreta. But it is pancreata when you have the chorionic villi penetrate the full thickness of the myometrium, to, or even through the perimetrium to the peritoneal covering outside. So this abnormality is what is called placental pancreata. So the third trimester bleeding is common whenever this happen, whenever these abnormalities happen. So it presents, it's a common sign of this placental abnormality whenever there is bleeding during the third trimester. And most patients with placenta accreta actually have normal pregnancies and labors. And after birth, the placenta fails to separate easily from the uterine wall, and attempts to remove it may end up, leading to more hemorrhage, which is difficult to control. So, and this is usually resulting from the fact that the blastocyst implants close to, I mean, when the fetus, when the blastocyst implants close to the overlying internal walls of the uterus, or when the fetus, I mean, in the case of placenta previa, so if the placenta is covering the internal os completely, then the baby has to be delivered through a cesarean section. So if the placenta is completely obstructing the internal os. And an ultrasound scan is one of the ways to diagnose this clinically, in order to prepare adequately for this during childbirth. So all of these complications are associated with different level of hemorrhage and fetal growth restriction, and also preterm delivery. Another abnormality that could occur is having an accessorial placenta, in addition to a placenta that is already fully formed, a full-term placenta. So here is the full-term placenta here, and then here is an accessorial one here. So developing from a patch of chorionic villi that persisted at a short distance from the main placenta. So here's an accessorial placenta. There could be other variations. There could be variations in the size and shape of placenta, but most placental abnormalities that result from persistence in the villi, in the chorionic villi, are usually, most of them are of little physiological or clinical significance, because at the end of the day, the pregnancy could be normal. So, however, when the chorionic villi persists on the entire surface of the chorionic sac, which is quite uncommon, so a thin layer attaches to a large area of the uterus, and this type of placenta is known as a membranous placenta. So there is also placental insufficiency, which is a clinical correlation. So in this case, placental dysfunction can have, profound effects on the child. I mean, on the fetus, on the fetal health. And some of that will include growth restrictions, so IUGR, intrauterine growth restriction, and susceptibility to harmful substances. So when there is placental insufficiency, there is an impairment in the exchange of gases and nutrients. And a common consequence of that is that you see a very small placenta. So it's a small placenta that has partially come away from the uterus. So this is unlike you have in the case of the normal placenta, which is in its normal location with the placenta attached. Also, a clinical correlate is the fact that drugs, a number of substances can cross the barrier. It's a fertile ground for teratogens like alcohol, nicotine, and other medications, cigarettes, lead mercury to cross into the child, especially when taken during the critical periods of pregnancy. So teratogens are referred to as agents that can induce or increase the incidence of a birth defect in a developing child. And they range from all of these examples that have been given. So the placenta is also the window for that to happen. Also, there is the torch infections. Torch, referring to Toxoplasma gondii, and other agents like the Treponema pallidum. Then you have the rubella virus, then the cytomegalovirus (CMV), and the herpes virus. So that's the acronym torch is the acronym for all of these, and they are usually transmitted to the fetus through the placenta. When this happens, the infant may suffer an infection while passing through the birth canal as well. And the mother can also pass the infection to the infant through the breast milk. So it becomes an important thing to watch out for, in order to not infect the developing fetus or even newborn with any of these viruses. So it could come down with a number of complications like preterm birth, delayed development of the fetus, physical malformations, and even the entire loss of the pregnancy. Listed below are some of these symptoms that could um, accompany such infections. So perhaps our last set of tests, our last set of questions. Do you have your cards ready? So the question now is, at term, what's the approximate weight of the placenta? If you are following 250, 500, 1 kilogram, or 2 kilogram. What is the answer? Can you flip your cards? Okay, I must admit. Now it is green as well. Okay, yeah, so I said it's approximately 500 grams. Okay, let's try again now. Um, Placenta previa, what is it characterized by? What is it characterized by? Is it premature separation of placenta from the uterine wall, or the placenta covering the cervical os, abnormal invasion into the uterine wall, or reduced nutrients exchange? So the correct answer comes with the green card again. Okay, so we give it up to the green card this time around. Okay, so placenta previa occurs when the placenta partially or completely covers the cervical os, like we mentioned earlier. So, of course, this poses a lot of risk to the delivery, and the child may have to be delivered through cesarean section. And our final quiz for this session: torch infections torch infections affecting the placenta include all of the following, except which? Toxoplasmas, cytomegalovirus, herpes, or tuberculosis. Hmm, which one is it? So we finally get to take it away from the green card this time around, because the correct answer is D. So I hope you were getting the answers correctly all through. So it's my pleasure to bring us to the summary of this entire talk, where we've learned that the placenta is a multifunctional temporary organ that is critical to pregnancy. Its development involves trophoblast invasion, villi formation, and vascularization. And then its function includes supporting the fetus as it grows by ways of transport um, of substances, hormonal secretions, and immune barrier or immune functions. So we understand that to understand the placenta helps in managing pregnancy complications and in improving maternal health outcomes. So to conclude, Placenta is an extraordinary organ, and its study not only highlights its role in pregnancy but also its clinical significance in addressing complications. These references will provide a detailed embryological insight into placental development, these two texts, and there are more that you could also gain insight. So, on these notes, I wish you all the very best and see you next time. I hope you've had a great time in this session, and I'll be happy to take your questions in the comments section. Bye, everyone.